Welcome back to Helping Healthcare Scale. I'm your host, Austin Hare, and I am pleased to welcome our guest, Dominic Mazzone. He is the CEO of MedSpa Partners. It was North America's leading medical aesthetic platform, and they have about 40 locations, and they've been doing exceptionally well. And so, Dominic, thanks for coming on the show.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. So I know we were talking earlier, and you have quite the extensive background in different entrepreneurial ventures. And I think this is number 19, which is crazy. And so I would love to just give some context to the audience about, who is Dominic? What are some of the things that you've tried in the past that kind of helped shape who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. God, it was a lot of different things. I started my first business when I was 16, which was a car detail business in San Diego. I've done everything from, gosh, that to by the time I was 17, I was promoting American bands in Tijuana.
Wow.
Um,
You were
I
living in Tijuana?
I was living in San Diego. So
Okay.
I was bringing American bands down from San Diego. I've done a bunch of stuff in real estate. I had a small investment fund that acted as a bridge lender. I started the first internet funeral company. I've done
Internet
a book,
funerals.
internet funerals. Yeah, we took the
Wow.
whole funeral model and we moved that online. Um, that was a business that shook up the industry massively, as you can imagine.
Hmm.
It's great to not be in the funeral business anymore. It's not the funnest business in the world, but it was fun digitizing it and shaking it up. So that was a lot of fun. And then just I've done a lot of consulting as well. All kinds of different sizes of business. Smallest one was like 1 million in revenue. The largest was like 4.5 billion.
Wow.
Um, and so got to see a lot. And it's funny because although you're things I've seen and I've learned and you I think you said you know what kind of led you up to where we're at now and sometimes when you're first of all those businesses weren't successful. You don't have 19 businesses and have them actually be successful.
Yeah.
um you could have one or two businesses and have them be successful, but when you're running at that pace, you just don't. And you learn a lot from that. And a lot of times, I think we're in the middle of doing things that we don't realize is building a book of experience that you are going to utilize and you are going to use in future endeavors. And sometimes, you know, you're getting your butt kicked all day, every day in something, and you're like, I'm not getting any value out of this. And it's like, no, you actually are getting a lot of value out of it. You're gaining a ton of experience, and you're going to take that experience, you're going to do something that's going to end up being really successful. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to keep that
No,
in mind.
it's a great point because my first job was working at McDonald's. And I remember, I couldn't sit down. It was like 8-hour shifts. After taxes, making minimum wage, I think I took home like $32 back in like, the early 2000s. And cleaning toilets, everything. But I remember thinking like, okay, I am not going to do this for the rest of my life. Like
Mhm.
that's what at 14 years old, like my first, real quote unquote job. But the takeaway from that was like, yeah, that's what motivated me to like work hard at everything else that I did and that I tried so that I wouldn't have to go back and do that. So exactly to your point, it's like you don't know exactly what it's going to build, what kind of skill set you're going to get from that job or that opportunity. And I think like, it's cliche, but that's why it's important to like just try your best. You know what I mean? Like give it your best because the second you become reluctant and passive or apathetic, you're only hurting yourself,
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And even, in jobs, if you're gonna start a business and that business is one day going to um be large and you're gonna have a lot of people, like I'm like we're bearing down on almost 1,000 employees right now.
Wow.
And I learned a lot from a lot of different types of leaders. I learned a lot of positive things and I learned negative things where I went, oh, actually, that's not a good thing to do. I don't think I'm going to do that when I'm a leader. And so all those different experiences really help you be a leader in whatever you're going to do, as long as you have enough self-awareness and enough general awareness to understand what you're actually seeing and experiencing at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any examples of each of those? So, like, any examples in your life where you thought, "Wow, that was really great. I want to make sure that I keep doing that." And then, on the other end of that, it's like, "Oh, I'm never going to do that when I'm a leader or I'm a boss."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maybe maybe I'll start with a negative one. I just remember working, big corporation. Um, I worked at WorldCom out of Chicago now, and at the time, WorldCom was this very, very aggressive company. And we had an extremely aggressive sales force. And I'll never forget, like there was an 8 o'clock Monday morning meeting, and our director was this mean, nasty guy from Georgia, and we were living in Chicago, and he didn't realize that he actually had a bunch of adults, and these weren't little kids that he was dealing with. And what ended up happening was is people just had animosity around that. And the second thing is that um, all these people didn't sit through the Monday morning meeting. So now they're at a disadvantage, but as a leader, you're at a disadvantage because all your troops actually don't know what the messaging is. And I just saw a lot of ego involved in that. I mean, I try to run my company in a way where my team knows what to expect from me on a day-to-day basis. I want to be the same person every single day. And that doesn't mean that every day is the same. It's just that my handling of the situation is predictable. I don't provide them with something that's highly unpredictable because that creates a lot of instability. And so um, I tend to be a benevolent leader who is very attentive to performance and very intense. And I will call out lack of performance, but I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. I'm not the kind of leader who's going to actually make people feel like they don't understand um, where they stand. And I think that's a really important foundation to have a very successful company and a good culture if you provide stability for people when it comes to the way you actually lead.
Okay, yeah, I like that. And so maybe we can harp on that a little bit because I think you probably know the statistic: 9 out of 10 businesses, fail, or 7 out of 10 or whatever it is. But especially when it comes to like, there's also levels of failing, and you guys have 40 locations, which is awesome. And I mean, I talk to a lot of people. I know a lot of people. They have aspirations to grow a group platform or a group organization, and then they never get off the ground, or they can't get past one or 3 or 5 locations, right? Like, what do you think was pivotal to your guys' growth of like scaling, especially in medical? They call it the dark tunnel, right? Between like 2 and 7 locations, where it's like banks don't necessarily want to lend. You're not going to be chair side if you're the doctor, or whatever, as the primary owner at that stage. So like, what do you think is maybe, do you think that has to do with the leadership of the people, or is it something else?
So I got a lot of thoughts on that. I think the first start here, let's start here, right? So we have 40 locations. We have 40 large locations. We run a different kind of platform than most. Our locations, sometimes a single location is equal to 10 locations of other platforms
Hmm.
sometimes. So we run a different kind of model.
Square footage wise,
We,
or revenue wise, or what exactly?
yeah, well, revenue and EBITDA wise, like a lot of our clinics again are like 10 times, the average clinic. And I acquire clinics as a profession. That's what we do. We're an acquirer. I much rather buy a single location that's high producing than 7 or 8 locations that are just doing little bits. It's harder to manage. And you don't
Yeah.
get the operational leverage that you really want to really juice out some really great profit out of that. So let's start there. Like I think there's a real fascination with number of locations, and we've got to change that to a fascination on quality. When it comes to um, what you need, it's really interesting because I went through the same thing, right? Started with 0 locations. And I could tell you that the management and the structure and the processes, you have multiple inflection points as you go up the chain. 2 clinics, 5 clinics, 7 clinics, 12 clinics, 15 clinics, 20 clinics. What worked at 2 and 7 and 10 doesn't necessarily work when you're larger. And why a lot of folks do fail is their inability to realize the inflection point is happening and actually do something about it and change. I mean, for my organization, I really pride myself on having a great team that we constantly are memorializing the inflection points and saying, this is now a change. We have to change how we're doing things because it doesn't work. We're too big now. And we have to change those things around. And does even take this on a personal level. Like if you have 3 locations and something goes wrong, you could tend to it. You could go and you can tend to it. When you have 20, 30, 40, 50 locations, you cannot tend to everything. You actually then become an HR company and you actually have to hire correctly and you have to delegate correctly and you have to make sure that the accountability within the organization is set up in a way where people can make decisions, be accountable for those decisions, because you need many hands instead of just the few hands that you had when you were smaller. I think the ability or the inability to scale is based on the fact that, you know, you can manage, but you can't lead. And there's a big difference between those two things. I've met great managers and I've met great leaders. Rarely you find both, but you need the right people for the right part of the job. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and even that, like, there's countless books. I mean, literally endless content, right? That you could talk about managing and hiring people. But I guess my question is, did you find you had to give up any equity early on or any point in order to get good employees, good high level leaders in the company?
Always. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like we did that. We set that structure up on day one. It's definitely for our senior leadership, right? Because people that are trying to squeeze and hold on to every bit of equity they have and not let anybody share, it's just a kind of a penny wise, dollar foolish situation. Like my team will run through not a wall, but multiple walls. Not necessarily they have to run through themselves. And they have great incentive to do that. If you're not providing any incentive for those folks to go out there and kick some serious butt, like they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
The job is not a job anymore. And what
I
I mean
think
by that, what I mean by that is for senior leaders, a job is not enough. What you want is opportunity, like real opportunity and real, a feeling of ownership.
okay. Yeah. And that makes a ton of sense. I think like a lot of people have a fear, not necessarily around giving up the equity. At least I have, this is me. So just speaking personally, and the fear wasn't so much about giving up the equity and me having less equity. The fear was giving it to the wrong person and then having to, take it back. And I know you can do things with like phantom equity. So essentially, like if they don't make it past a certain point, they don't get it. But like, how did you deal with it? I'm sure at this stage you've had to come across people who you gave them equity and they were the wrong fit. Like, how did you address that?
Yeah, you do that happen sometimes. It's the cost of doing business, isn't it? Like, and the thing is, sometimes what is the wrong person? Sometimes it's the right person at the right stage in the business, and then they're not exactly the right person in the later stage of the business. And we've had a situation like that where I had someone who was great for the time of the business when it was all like the beginning stages and all that. And it were great. But then it got to a point where the business evolved so much further and we needed a different skill set in the seat. And that's just the cost of doing business.
So what did you do? Did they still have their equity? Was there like a
Well,
buyout or?
Yeah, they had a piece of equity, but it's, when you structure equity in a way where some is time vested, performance vested on liquidity. I mean, that's how you solve for it. So there's a certain piece that's guaranteed, it's going to be there, and there's a certain piece that you're going to have to be here all the way along the ride. You're going to have to be here at the end of the ride, get to appreciate that. half of the equity.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people, and I definitely include myself here, like do have a tendency to be greedy or think that like we can't give this up or we're not going to make enough or how are we going to survive? But like at the end of the day, you can always just do more together, And the proof is in the pudding. That's why it's cool having guys like you come on and talk about it. It's like, hey, you got to be generous, got to give up equity, and then you bring more people along for the ride, and it's more fun anyways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've always had just more of a philosophy of more is more. And if I have more people that care, it's just going to generate more in the future and it's all going to come out in the wash.
Yeah. Um, so going back to, you said you started with 0 locations. Like what got you into this business and what was the vision, that inspired you to actually get started?
Yeah, I was advising on a similar strategy in orthodontics. I met a dermatologist who was very knocked out by the business and the industry. I really liked the industry. I liked what was happening. Spent a lot of time researching it. 2.5 years, put it all together. Was the whole deal was dead 4 times. It got pulled out of the ashes 4 times by me to
What do you mean when you
keep
say it was
going.
it was dead? Were you trying to raise money from a bank or private equity, or what was the
Combination.
keeping it?
There were 3 reasons for being dead. Actually, it was one was I couldn't get any doctors to say they wanted to do it. I couldn't get financial sponsors to say they wanted to do it. Then I got doctors that said they wanted to do it. I got financial sponsors that said they want to do it. Then the doctors didn't want to do it again. And then the financial sponsors didn't want to do it. Like it was a roller coaster everywhere. I had so many PE funds just tell me to go away. This is impossible. This doesn't make sense. And med spas is such a hot market right now. And back when, it was 2017 when I started this journey, 2018, there was no such thing as a medical aesthetics roll-up. There was medical derm roll-ups, but not
Wow.
medical aesthetic roll-ups. And so I started that
You
very
paved the
early
way for the
on.
industry.
I did trailblaze. That's something I feel proud of. But yeah, I understand why people said no. Like it was new. They didn't understand it and didn't know what was going on. But I am very stubborn or ignorant or naive, one of those three, or a combination of all. And I just kept pushing until I finally got it there. And then boom, I finally got a financial sponsor who really understood it, really understood what I was trying to do and said, yeah, we get this. Let's go and do it. And then I was able to pull some doctors in and then just worked like crazy and got more and more and more and more and more and then built it to like what it is today.
So when you say got a financial sponsor and then got pulled doctors in, that sounds like you did more of a de novo versus like actually acquiring a practice. So was your first one a startup, the first one that you did?
No, 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 no. So what I mean pull doctors in is that I pulled their practices in. I got
Okay.
them to agree to sell us their practices. And you got to realize like there was nobody really buying. And so it took a lot of convincing for them to understand like this is a good thing and you're going to get millions of dollars like on day one when we do this. And, so it took a lot of evangelizing, but I got a set of doctors finally do it. And then I had the financial sponsor, of course, finally that had all the money to do it. And so that's how it all came together.
Yeah, that's cool. And so even back then, day one, acquisition number one, you're going after the big clinics like you are today, like you know exactly what you wanted back then.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going after big, huge clinics. And I mean, I could say we have some of the biggest clinics in North America. That's always been a focus. We've always just shied away from the smaller ones. We've done a couple of those, and I don't love doing them. I think the big clinics have a lot of attributes that I like, but it also fits in what we also have like in the medical aesthetic space. There's this whole idea around key opinion leaders who are like the top of their game, the top of their industry. And we got a great group of those folks, and they enjoy the community that we kind of provide for them as well, because they're all learning off each other, and it creates a really great environment for not only those doctors, but also new doctors that are coming in, younger doctors who actually get to be around and learn from all of these incredible people. So that was basically our strategy.
That's great. Um, yeah, so I know we're kind of getting close to the end of our time here together. Just, have two questions. Like, what's the one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you got started?
This business in particular.
Yeah, this business.
Oh my God, there's so many things. I'm
Or you can do a
overwhelmed.
couple. You can do one or two.
Yeah, I think in general, healthcare roll-ups are tough. Healthcare
Mm,
roll-ups in general are tough. So I think for me, getting all the incentives and motivations correct from the beginning would be great. You learn over time and you get much more intelligent over time and smarter. But it's just alignment of motivations and incentives is really important early on. And that's something I wish I
mm.
knew everything I know today. If I knew that 5 years ago, I think that would have been great. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing that's in particular for our platform.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, and then is there anything that you want to talk about or you want to add that we didn't address yet that we didn't have, bring up so far?
Gosh, so many things. I guess, if people are listening to this and really focused on the healthcare space, I think two things. Like one is I am I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, so I'm very, very, very pro entrepreneur. Um, the one thing that us entrepreneurs though lack is asking enough questions. I think the mindset of an entrepreneur is, you got to go out there and push like crazy, and you want to go and you want to open things, you want to make them all happen. And sometimes it could be a ready, aim, fire situation instead of ready, fire, aim, or sorry, ready, aim, fire. But a lot of times, sorry, it's a ready, fire, and then aim, and it's just not good. I'll ask a gazillion questions, talk to people that are smarter than you. I pride myself on um, being the least intelligent person in my company. I think I've surrounded myself with very intelligent people who can not only do their jobs, but really articulate the issues that they're seeing, at the same time, drive strategy, drive execution. Surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you. And that's going to make you so much stronger. A lot of times, entrepreneurs can fall into a mode where they don't put people around them that'll challenge them. You do not want to be the smartest guy in the room. If you are the smartest guy in the room, it's limiting to you. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that I've learned over time, and I'm really happy where I am at this point because I do realize that, and so I consistently try to find people that are going to bring so much more to the table than I could.
Yeah, that's a really great point because you have this dichotomy of humility and asking questions, and then ego and pride, which is the belief you can get it done. And like neither one is good. It would just without the other. Like of course,
So
everybody
true.
knows people who have way too much pride and ego, right? But if you have way too much humility, on the other hand, like you're not going to get it done. You have to have the belief in yourself to be able to go that you can execute this, but the humility enough to answer the question. And so like that's such a balancing act. That's probably why so few people scale such great organizations.
Yeah, Austin, actually, that was really well said on your part. I think you're right. Like, I think that you need you know, drive doesn't live well usually with a passive, methodical, thoughtful mindset. Drive is drive, and drive wants to just go, go, go. But when you can actually get that combination, it works wonderfully. Because we've also seen the other side where about this ever. And sorry, I don't know if I broke up there on you, Austin,
It
but
broke up a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, I was just
You
gonna
said
say,
I can see the other side.
yeah, the other side is, thinking about something forever and never executing.
Hmm.
And we see that all the time, right? We see people talk, talk, talk because they're thinking, 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 but that drive part of it of just saying, screw it, man, let's just go for it. Let's just make it happen is not there. And that's just an important ingredient. But man, it does need to be tempered by some of the other things. And I could tell you that I was a crazy entrepreneur in my teens and in my 30s, and a much more thoughtful entrepreneur in my 40s and now into my
Hmm.
50s.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So,
Um, yeah, no, I love that. So yeah, I guess as we wrap up here, like what's a good way if people want to learn more about what you're doing or get in touch or anything like that? What's a good resource for people?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're MedSpa Partners. I'm of course on LinkedIn. That's the only social media I'm on, just because I don't have time for much more than that. But
Yeah,
yeah, you can catch anything. But we're MedSpa Partners. That's what we do. And yeah, I really enjoyed this, Austin. Thanks for taking the time with me.
you're welcome. Yeah, guys. So check them out on LinkedIn at MedSpa Partners. And Dominic, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Austin.